I hadn't even told my husband about the $28 million I'd just inherited when the bank officer glanced up from her screen, frowned, and said, "Mrs. Dunmore, I need to stop you right there. According to our records, you've been divorced for 8 months." I remained completely still for 3 seconds. Then I did one thing. Charlotte, North Carolina, late October. The kind of afternoon when the sky can't decide between gold and gray, and everything feels suspended between what it was and what it's about to become. My name is Rachel Dunmore. I was 38 that year, the founder and principal architect of Dunmore Design Group, a mid-size commercial architecture firm I had built from a single rented desk in a co-working space on South Boulevard into a company with 42 employees, 3 major municipal contracts, and a reputation in the Carolinas that I had quietly bled for over a decade. I didn't come from money. My father repaired HVAC systems. My mother worked the front desk at a dental office. What I had, I earned with my hands and my mind, and a nearly pathological refusal to quit. The only person in my family who had created real wealth was my Uncle Curtis. Curtis Dunmore was my father's older brother, a self-made man who'd spent 40 years investing in commercial real estate across the Southeast, quietly, without fanfare, the way serious people build things. He didn't drive an expensive car. He wore the same style of wool blazer for 30 years. The one extravagant thing he owned was an antique brass drafting compass, the kind architects used before CAD software made them obsolete, that had sat on his home office desk since before I was born. When I was 12, he sat me down and showed me how to use it. He said, "Rachel, this tool doesn't draw the picture for you. It just keeps you honest about the distance between where you are and where you're trying to go." I didn't completely understand it then. When I opened Dunmore Design Group years later, Uncle Curtis mailed me that compass with no note, just the compass wrapped in a piece of graph paper. I placed it on my desk where it stayed for 11 years. Curtis died of a stroke in September at 71. He had no children. He had never married. When the estate attorney called me 3 weeks later and told me what he had left behind, a portfolio of commercial properties, a brokerage account, and a stake in a logistics company, worth in total just over $28 million. I sat in my car in the parking garage of my office building for a long time without moving. I loved my uncle. The number was almost beside the point. Almost. I scheduled an appointment at the bank, where the brokerage account was held, to begin the process of transferring the assets into my name. My husband Jason knew Curtis had died. He knew the estate was being settled. He didn't know the number yet. I told myself I would tell him that evening over dinner somewhere nice, that maybe this could be a turning point for us. I said that to myself. I believed it the way you believe something you already know isn't true but aren't ready to face yet. Jason Dunmore. My husband of 9 years, 6'1", charming in the way that men who've never had to try too hard tend to be, and smart enough to know which room to be in. When we met, he was a director of operations at a manufacturing company in Raleigh. By the time we'd been married 3 years, that company had restructured and he'd been laid off. I had just landed Dunmore Design Group's first real anchor contract, a new public library branch for Mecklenburg County. I needed someone to manage the operational side while I focused on design and client work. Jason stepped in. It seemed natural. Partners in life, partners in work. He handled the contractors, the vendor relationships, the insurance, the bonding, the surety bond that backed our municipal contracts, without which we couldn't bid on government work at all. He was good at it. He knew how to charm a subcontractor into meeting a deadline without threatening litigation. I was grateful. What I didn't see, what I chose not to see, was that over time Jason began to treat the firm less like something we'd built together, and more like something he controlled. My name was on the door. His hands were on the controls. We had tried for children. 2 years of trying naturally, followed by another 2 of fertility treatments. Clomid, then IUI, then 1 complete round of IVF that failed in the 8th week. Jason's mother, Lorraine, was a retired schoolteacher from Spartanburg, South Carolina. A woman who showed affection through casseroles and criticism in almost equal measure. She never missed a chance to mention that her sister's granddaughter had just had twins at 41, as though this were a personal challenge I had somehow refused to accept. At Christmas, she announced in front of 11 relatives that she'd been lighting candles at church for us every Sunday for 2 years. Everyone stared at their plates. Jason cleared his throat. I smiled until my face hurt. I had hired Lacey Pruitt 2 years before everything collapsed, through a workforce re-entry program the firm participated in, a county initiative connecting employers with adults who'd experienced career gaps because of caregiving or economic hardship. Lacey was 26, a single mother with a 3-year-old daughter, sharp and ambitious, in a way that reminded me of myself at that age, minus the safety net. She had begun a drafting certificate program at Central Piedmont, but had to leave when her mother became sick and the childcare money ran out. I sponsored the rest of her certification. I allowed her to come in on a flexible schedule. I taught her how to read a site plan, how to present to a client without apologizing for taking up space. When she completed the certificate, I promoted her to project coordinator. "You didn't have to do any of this," she told me once, sitting across from my desk. "Don't say you owe me," I said. "Just do the work well. If you can, pass it on someday." She looked at me and said, "I will. I swear I will." I thought she meant it. I believe she did once. Some people climb out of hardship genuinely wanting to grow. Then something changes. The gratitude fades. The comparison begins. They stop measuring how far they've come and start measuring what you have. I didn't notice it happening. I was busy running a company. The appointment at the bank was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The estate officer, a woman named Bev, mid-50s, reading glasses pushed into her hair, pulled up the account information, started the verification process, and stopped. She looked at her screen, then at me, then back at the screen. The expression on her face was the kind people wear when they're about to say something they'd rather avoid. "Miss Dunmore," she said cautiously, "before we proceed with the asset transfer, I'm seeing something I need to flag. Your marital status here is listed as divorced, finalized approximately 8 months ago." She slid the reading glasses back down. "Do you need a moment?" I didn't move. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Then I grabbed my phone and called Elaine Marsh. Elaine was the attorney who had handled every major contract Dunmore Design Group had ever signed. She was 52, wore blazers the color of concrete, and had a voice that could bring a deposition to a stop at 50 yards. She answered on the second ring. "Elaine," I said. My voice came out softer than I expected. "I need you to meet me right now." She heard something in it. She didn't ask questions. 15 minutes, she said. "My office." I apologized to Bev. I told her I needed to confirm some information before we continued. She gave me a printout, just the marital status line, highlighted in yellow, and said she hoped it was a clerical mistake. I thanked her. I walked out of the bank. I sat in my car in the parking lot for exactly 4 minutes, not crying, not moving, simply listening to the traffic on Trade Street like it was the only real thing in the world. Elaine had the divorce filing on her screen within 30 minutes through a contact at the Mecklenburg County Clerk's office. The petition had been filed 10 months ago. Uncontested. The service address for all court correspondence was listed as Dunmore Design Group's business address on South Boulevard. The waiver of appearance. The marital settlement agreement signed by both parties, in which I surrendered any claim to Jason's personal accounts and agreed to buy out his interest in the firm for a nominal amount. And there was my signature. Elaine placed her pen down very carefully on her legal pad. I knew exactly when I had signed it. 14 months ago, I'd had emergency surgery to remove my gallbladder. It happened quickly. A Tuesday night, severe pain, the ER, a surgical consult, procedure the next morning. Jason was there, attentive during those first 2 days, the way people become when they suddenly understand how easily things can vanish. On the third day, while I was still groggy on painkillers and working through a tray of hospital jello, he walked in carrying a folder. He said the bonding company needed updated authorization paperwork for the municipal contract renewal, and the deadline was that Friday. He held the pen toward me. He pointed out the signature lines with a posted arrow. "Right here and here," he said. "It's just administrative. You trust me, right?" I signed. I signed because my incision was hurting, and I was exhausted, and I believed this was the man I had chosen. I thought shared history meant shared intentions. I thought the years we'd spent arguing over contractor invoices and celebrating contract wins at the same table meant we were still on the same side. Some lessons you don't get to learn cheaply. Some you pay for with years. Elaine told me not to go home and confront Jason. She told me to go through the office mail logs from the past year and identify any envelopes from the court. She told me to back up everything. I drove to the office instead of going home. It was nearly 6 o'clock. Most of the staff had already left. I pulled the physical mail log binder from the front desk, and there it was. 3 entries over an 8-month period, each marked in handwriting I recognized immediately. Legal notice, J. Dunmore per his request. Lacey's handwriting. I sat down. I didn't throw anything. I didn't make a sound. I simply stared at those 3 lines until the letters stopped swimming. That night I went home at 8:30. Jason was on the couch watching a college basketball game with a bowl of pretzels. He looked up. "Long day," he said. "Yes," I said. "Long day." I went into the bathroom, turned the shower on, and called Rob Pettis from my cell. Rob had been in my graduate program at NC State, had dropped out of architecture after the first year, when he realized what he actually loved was finding things people tried to hide. He ran a small investigative firm in Raleigh now. "I need you to run a full financial trace on my husband," I said, "and on a woman named Lacey Pruitt." Rob was quiet for 2 seconds. "How deep?" "All the way." The next morning, I was in the office by 7. I reviewed 3 years of vendor payment records with our bookkeeper, Mona, who had been with the firm since year 2 and had the memory of a forensic accountant and the loyalty of someone who understood what it meant to build something from nothing. I told her I was doing a pre-audit review for bonding renewal. She pulled the reports without blinking. We found Pruitt Property Services within 40 minutes, an LLC registered in Cabarrus County, listed as a building maintenance and facilities supply vendor. Over 28 months, Dunmore Design Group had paid Pruitt Property Services a total of $418,000. Maintenance fees, equipment rentals, supply invoices, each one vague enough to pass a quick review, specific enough to appear legitimate. The registered agent was a woman named Darlene Pruitt, Lacey's mother. Mona removed her glasses and placed them on the desk. She stared at the screen without saying anything for a long moment. Then she said, "Tell me what you need." Sprick everything you just pulled," I said. "Nothing through the company server." 3 days later, Rob called me. Lacey had a second phone, a prepaid one registered to her mother's address. Its billing records, accessed through legal channels, showed regular contact with a private email associated with Meridian Group, our main competitor, the firm that had underbid us on 2 contracts in the past 18 months, both of which we had been certain to win. Rob had also tracked Lacey's bank deposits. In addition to her salary from us, she had received 4 wire transfers from a Delaware shell entity over 14 months, total $62,000. Lacey wasn't merely involved with Jason. She was supplying Meridian with our bid documents, our client contact lists, our project schedules. She had entered my office under the promise of a second chance and used it as an opening. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I felt something become very quiet inside me, the way a room falls silent after a door closes. The surety bond for our largest active project, a $14 million county courthouse expansion, ran through a bonding agent Jason had personally managed for 6 years. He had mentioned twice in the past month that his contact there wouldn't cooperate well with new management. The implication was obvious. If I moved against Jason, the bond would be pulled. We would default on the contract. 42 employees, 8 years of reputation. I called Carlton Webb. Carlton was a 60-year-old attorney in uptown Charlotte who specialized in construction law and financial fraud. I had heard his name twice in professional circles, but had never needed him. What I didn't know until Elaine told me was that Carlton Webb had grown up in McColl, South Carolina, the son of a house painter, and that in 1988, a real estate investor named Curtis Dunmore had co-signed a loan that allowed Carlton to attend law school when every other door was closed. My uncle had never mentioned it to me, not once. When I walked into Carlton's office and explained why I was there, he studied me for a long time before speaking. Then he said, "Your uncle wrote me a letter every Christmas for 20 years. He never asked for anything. He just said he hoped I was doing honest work." He picked up a pen. "Tell me everything." Carlton moved quickly and quietly. Within a week, he had connected us with a competing bonding agency, stronger rated than the one Jason controlled, and had the transfer of surety underway. He filed the fraud documentation with the North Carolina Secretary of State and coordinated the financial crime referral with the DA's office. Elaine handled the family law side. Mona's encrypted drive went into Carlton's safe. Jason didn't know any of this was happening. He came home most nights, ate dinner, watched television, went to bed. Once, he rubbed my shoulder while I was standing at the kitchen counter and said, "You've been stressed. You should take a weekend off after the courthouse groundbreaking." "You're right," I said. "I should." Some things you hold on to, not because you've forgiven them, but because you need them to remain exactly where they are a little longer. The groundbreaking ceremony for the Mecklenburg County Courthouse expansion was on a Thursday morning in November. 60 people, county commissioners, project managers, subcontractors, a local news camera. I wore a gray blazer and carried the brass drafting compass in my jacket pocket, the one Curtis had given me, the one that had remained on my desk for 11 years. I didn't know exactly why I brought it that morning. I just needed to hold something real. I was 3 sentences into my remarks at the podium when Jason stepped forward and interrupted. He didn't raise his voice. He spoke directly to the county commissioner's project liaison and said there was an unresolved dispute over authorization rights within Dunmore Design Group's ownership structure that needed to be addressed before the project could continue. He held up a folder. He said he had documentation. He looked calm. He looked prepared. He looked like a man who had rehearsed this exact moment many times. The liaison looked at me. I took a breath. "Mr. Dunmore is referring to a legal dispute that was resolved 3 days ago," I said. "If he'd like to confirm the current bonding status with the project surety, that would be Meridian Fidelity Group, our new bond carrier, effective Tuesday. The letter of credit is in the project file the county received yesterday." So's to see me. It simply stalled, like a program trying to run a file that no longer exists. I continued, "In the interest of full transparency with the county, I also want to note that a referral has been made to the Mecklenburg County DA's office regarding financial irregularities within our firm's vendor payment history. And a separate matter involving unauthorized use of a power of attorney has been referred to the NC State Bar. Those matters are now in the hands of the appropriate authorities." Carlton was standing at the back of the crowd. He gave me a small nod. 2 county commissioners asked whether the project timeline was still intact. "It is," I said. "We break ground today." And we did. In the months that followed, Jason was charged with wire fraud, abuse of a power of attorney, and conspiracy to misuse corporate funds. He pled out to a lesser charge and received a suspended sentence and substantial fines. Lacey and her mother faced civil liability for the fraudulent invoices. Lacey separately faced charges connected to the stolen bid documents. Meridian Group, once the payment structure became clear to investigators, quietly settled a civil suit and withdrew from 2 Charlotte area contracts they had won, using information they had no right to possess. I used part of Uncle Curtis's inheritance to establish a scholarship fund for students in architecture and construction management programs at Central Piedmont Community College, specifically for older adults with career gaps and dependents. The first recipient was selected the following spring. She was 31, retraining after a difficult divorce, raising 2 kids on a part-time income. I met with her before the award was announced. I shook her hand. She looked overwhelmed. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "Just do the work honestly. If you can, pass it on." She nodded. I believed her. On a cold February morning, I sat in my corner office, same building, different floor, larger windows, and looked out at the Charlotte skyline. The compass sat on my desk where it always had. I picked it up and turned it once in my palm. It doesn't draw anything for you. It just keeps you honest about the distance between where you are and where you're trying to go. I had spent 9 years thinking I was building something with a partner. It turned out I had been building it alone the entire time. I just hadn't seen it, because I was always looking at the blueprint instead of the person standing beside me. I don't carry hatred for what happened. Hatred is expensive, and I've learned to read the fine print before I sign anything. What I carry instead is the clearer weight of knowing exactly what I'm capable of when someone tries to take everything I've built, and knowing that my uncle, who never once asked for credit for a single thing he gave away, left me something worth protecting. Some inheritances are measured in dollars. The one that mattered most came wrapped in a piece of graph paper, with no note from a man who understood that the most important distance in anyone's life is the one between